Oh, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 131. As ever, I'm your host, Jordan Ledger, joined as all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. We are fully in the... I feel like we're now starting to get the bubbles of everyone's getting ready for the NBA season. I think we're like 60 days off. But you're starting to see more press quotes come about. You're starting to see players starting to talk a bit of smack, as what I'd say. I think that's bordering the line of PG for it. But before we jump into this week's podcast, which we're going to be discussing who has the most approved next season, I'm going to ask what I do every week. Louis and Lewis, how you doing? Louis, how are you in particular? Before we jumped in, you was telling me how good the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles new movie was. So I feel like that's where we should start with that one.
Oh yeah, it was quality. It's got that different type of animation style where like Spider-Verse basically done it first, and now everyone's kind of copying, where it's not like your classic CG sort of computer. But I recommend seeing it. I don't think a lot of people have seen it either. So I'd recommend.
It's been lost after the Oppenheimer Barbie hype. There's kind of been a little lull afterwards. I think
exactly. Get some pizza in your life. Some Master Splinter, voiced by Jackie Chan. In fairness, which was nice. Yeah, star-studded cast. So you know.
Lewis, how are you going to top Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
Can't top it. Played football on Monday and got absolutely crocked. So this the other end for me, that meme with nothing small about in my life. Had to play in goal and an e-sport as well on Thursday, which was fantastic.
Zion,
brilliant. There we go. That's what it is. Well, as you can see, if you are watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on our video platform on Spotify or however, this podcast is about who has the most to prove next season in the NBA. So simple as we set the brief and we kind of just said no limit on numbers, but just kind of grab a few players, maybe not the obvious ones. We'll probably talk about if there's one or two obvious ones in general, but trying to find some obscure players that we feel have quite a bit to prove for next season. Now, I have mine prepared and I have images for them, but I don't know what Louis and Lewis are going to say. So I'm going to go to you first, Louis. You're going to say your name, and then I'm going to try and find a picture to throw on the screen for the player as well.
That's fine. I won't choose any of the three that you have, that we have lovely edited onto the podcast thumbnail there.
Yeah, shout out Nathan.
Shout out Nathan. Yeah. If you're not watching this on video, that's Jordan Poole-Zahn and Jaylen Brown, which I think were all pretty obvious picks, and I think we can, discuss further later on down the line. I think particularly Jaylen Brown, I think we're going to have a big discussion on. So bearing in mind, I might go a bit out here, actually.
Okay.
No. Let me go for a bit more tempered one to start with. I'm going to cheat slightly and choose two players here, but they're kind of lumping in together because they play for the same team and they're in the sort of similar type of position. Okay. And I'm going to go for Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet, so that Houston Rockets backcourt. I think so. On an obvious scale, Fred VanVleet got a lot of money this offseason. A lot of people thought he got too much money. Fair enough. He's a one-time All-Star, and I guess he's getting paid like a multi-time All-NBA player, which I don't think he is of that level. And Jalen Green's a different one as well, where he's been in the league a couple of years now. He puts up solid numbers, but we're yet to see him really, lead a team to any sort of meaningful win total. And I think the reason that they've got sort of a bit more expectations or something to prove this season is that I feel like there's a clear shift in the way this franchise wants to operate. So the last two seasons, I think they've been kind of okay in terms of we're going to sort of actively try and lose, I'd say, quite a few games so they can get these high draft picks. Whereas this year, obviously, we've given Fred VanVleet the bag. Obviously, with employing... I've forgotten his name. It was the Ime Udoka. That's a bad name to forget. Who was, I'm going to guess, quite a highly sought after coach, particularly given the sort of coaching merry-go-round we had in this offseason and how well he done with that Celtics team last year. I think there's a clear shift in how this franchise wants to operate, and they want to win now and they want to get in the playoffs. So I think the onus on doing that is going to be quite a lot on both of these guys. They're going to be the sort of leaders of this team. And I think if it doesn't go well, I think you'll be seeing sort of whispers of one of the two of them getting traded. And I think particularly you're probably going to be leaning more into Jalen Green for that and maybe looking to get a more ready-made star to be alongside Fred VanVleet in the backcourt. And I guess it's just a different type of a different type of style that Jalen Green is going to have to play because the ball's been in his hands so much for the last couple of years, and now he's going to have to give a little bit of that up and find a new way to play, try and score more off ball, try and utilize some of that athleticism in sort of cutting and stuff like that, and not depend on having the ball in his hands all the time. So I think this is more actually, as I've talked this through, I think when I was going into this, I thought Fred VanVleet, obviously he's got the bag. He's probably the best player on this team and they're expected to win. That's kind of the case for that one. But now that I'm talking it through, I think the most at risk here for his position is probably Jalen Green if this team doesn't get off running to a decent start or like has a good season in general. So you may disagree. You may not think that the Houston Rockets have as much expectations to win on them, but I'm just thinking from their owner's perspective. Clearly, they're wanting them to win this season.
I say the Jalen Green having a lot to prove. I wouldn't be able to sort of jump on that one. I don't feel. I think that his team value, and I agree with you. I feel that if one of them is going to get moved or if something doesn't click right and something that's wrong in the early sort of stages of the season, I can see Jalen Green being something that's a make way. Fred VanVleet, I completely agree with you. If you're going to get the bag for this money, there is a certain level of which you have to then prove in terms of going into a new team and setting yourself as sort of that number one guy. But when you're saying what he has to prove, like what's the sort of, where's the line there? Because he's obviously going into a young team. They've got nice pieces, like Albert Sengun is really good. I really like Jabari Smith Jr. They've got young core guys. They're really raw. They've still got mistakes in them. Like, if he comes in and everyone around him gets better, but his numbers necessarily fall off, do you think that, like, because then that's classic NBA media. They're going to see that his points per game is going to have dipped a bit and everything. But if the Rockets start playing better because of his leadership, then you kind of, where's the... Do you know what I mean?
It's a team success thing more than his individual success. I could easily sit here and be like, oh, he's got to be an all-star, the amount of money he's being paid. I don't think that's as important as if the Rockets get into a playoff position, I think, or at least, at very least, a play-in. I think they'll be wanting that this time around. So yeah, that's what I do agree. There is a lot of rawness to that team, and I think it's a strange one for Ime as well, because I would have expected him to be drafted in by a team that's sort of got that ready-made core unit that's ready to win right now. Whereas with this one, he's going to have to sort of teach these guys how his style of play, and we know he's very tough. Defense first, that type of thing. He was sort of ragging on the Celtics all season when, that half season when they were playing terribly. He was calling them out quite a lot, and I would not be surprised if we get a couple of those, Jalen Green, he needs to focus more on defense, that type of thing. And with his athleticism, he should be a really good defender. His length. I think, to answer your original question, I think it's more of a team success thing for both of these guys more than individual. Because as well with the backcourts in the Western Conference, I'm not going to say like they've got to get in the All-Star, they've got to get in All NBA. I just think the team needs to do well, and those two are the central focal point, really.
Yeah, this does transition quite well actually, because one of the guys that I feel has quite a lot to prove this season is in this picture, but it isn't James Harden. For me, I know there's the easy one to jump onto Dylan Brooks, and I myself have said that everything that came with the criticism from the last postseason was blown way out of proportion. When you're like, China's calling, learn Chinese, buddy, because he's going to that league, it's just never going to happen. He was far too talented to not get a place within the NBA. The issue that comes with it is now, I'd say he got a fair, maybe a little bit too much money from what you'd say in the market. But then again, we're talking about Fred VanVleet's getting 44 or whatever it is when he's 31. But I think overall in this side, after he's coming off of what was nonetheless an embarrassing postseason for him, you can't call out LeBron and then cower away from it. There is going to be a level of expectation now, so you can't do that again. If he comes up next season and if they make the postseason, which would be a success for the Rockets, he can't go into the postseason, call somebody out again, and get beaten down like he did last time. Because if it's two in a row, then it is hard. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on the Fred VanVleet one quickly, because I didn't actually say anything. I'd just say, as Louis said, and I guess this comes into it as well, obviously. When we look at the Rockets, it is more of the team performance, I think, because of how, even though they didn't perform well last year as a whole, think people rate a lot of the individual players in the Rockets quite highly. George mentioned them before. And it is going to be interesting seeing Fred VanVleet playing with them, because I don't think his style fits perfectly with a lot of those players who, as Louis said, do like having the ball or do operate best with the ball. So trying to figure that balance out is going to be an interesting one, because you look at a player like not even touching on Jalen Green, you look at Schengen, he's obviously drawn some comparisons to Sabonis, and then obviously the Jokic one's outlandish, but it's mainly just because of what he can do with the ball, as opposed to normally how you'd expect a traditional centre to operate. So I think when people look at Fred VanVleet, it will be through sort of veteran eyes. So it will be, as you've both said, less on his individual numbers and more on how the team improves. And with Dylan Brooks, I will say, I'm not sure if I'd say he's got a ton to prove, because I just think he has performed at a decent level. It's just because of what happened last season in the playoffs and how in the spotlight he was, because of what he said, mainly, it does elevate things. And so maybe that then thrusts him into the spotlight again for next season, when really he's not a star by any means. So I don't know what people's expectations of him will be. Maybe that'll be another.
It's all relevant to the person and the player.
Yeah,
in terms of it. So
I think Dylan Brooks I think he'll probably be fine, because I think he will play at a decent level. I don't think he's got to reach for the stars or anything, because that's just not the player he is. So I think he'll be fine.
I also think. Sorry, I was going to say, I also think, just to jump on your point about can he call out like styles or whatever, I think you lose a bit of what makes him a little bit, I don't want to say special, but like what makes him the player that he is if he doesn't do that type of thing, if he doesn't try and wind up the opposition a little bit.
Yeah, completely.
And he is kind of the adult in that team, which is a bit worrying, if I'm quite honest. He's not the type of person who I'd want with like the sort of, it's him and Fred, but I feel like Dylan's probably, I don't know them both personally, but I feel like Dylan's probably the more vocal leader of the two. So I mean, he's going to have to come with some of that vim that he comes with. But I do think he's going to have to be he's going to get like clowned at every single arena that he goes to, if I'm quite honest. But
I don't think it'll be that bad. I really don't. He had moments in the regular season last year where he's good, and you can see that he isn't just a one-trick pony. It's you call out. It's the manner in which you do this, though. Like, obviously, there are going to be players, and that's how they are. They have that chip on their shoulder that will go and call out and try and get under other players' skin. It was the manner of doing it to LeBron James. I think it was the issue, and then getting beaten down as they did was it was the level to it is what it was for it. But Lewis, hit us with your first one in terms of where you think a player should be showing something to prove next season.
I'm going to get the boring one out of the way, because I said it earlier before we jumped on, and I feel like we've been saying it for the last couple of years now. So I'd be surprised if anyone disagrees with it. But I'll just say Ben Simmons first off, just because I think.
Oh, I had another player typed out there.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe you can do that one next. But it's just, we've obviously been waiting a while now for him to even start playing basketball again, at the very least. So that's step number one. And then after that, seeing if he can get back to what he once was, which sounds crazy to say, because even though we feel like we've been waiting forever for Ben Simmons to play basketball, excuse me, it's not that long ago. So, and he's not like he's very old or a veteran in the league at this point. So he has a lot of time. I'm not even talking about, I feel like is he going to develop a shot has died finally. So we don't have to talk about that, but just getting back to his, levels of defense, playmaking, and just getting on the court is what we want to see from him.
So in terms of the Ben Simmons side of things, he hasn't played since March, right? That was when he was officially ruled out for the rest of the season with that back injury. He got 17 games or something in this regular season that's just gone past. His first sort of two, apart from when he was flagged for the first one, his first two, he had a 79 and 81 game season. do you actually ever see, because we're talking, Ben Simmons is 27 now. Like, I don't think people, whenever I think of Ben Simmons, I don't think necessarily he's 27 years old. Like, I wouldn't put that into perspective for. I still think, oh, he's like 23, 24. Like, that's just how it's inbuilt in these sort of players still. His contract runs out when he's 29. He's got 2 more years where he earns like $43 million or something in his last one. I will be staggered if come this season, and if not next season, he doesn't play 50 to 60 games to try and secure his bag. He will play through the pain barrier to make sure that he looks like he's a competent NBA player to get a 2-3 year contract minimum. He's not going to be getting 40 mil, nowhere near close. But he needs to, like, if there's nothing within this time frame in the next 2 years, then then the alarm bells start ringing of if he's even going to get a spot in the league. Because you've seen more talented players lose the league, like get out of the league because they have these reoccurring injuries, or they don't play more than 20 games in a season and things like that. It's not a new thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Yeah, I guess the expectations or the pressure conversation that comes to Ben is just like his stocks are so like low at the moment. Like, he's only got room to improve or like prove people wrong, I guess, because everyone's in the and rightly so. I'm not saying this is a wrong thing to think, but he hasn't played basketball in the last couple of years. Like, it's
Probably.
like I wouldn't offer it if he was a free agent tomorrow. I wouldn't offer him a contract because he doesn't seem to really want to play basketball. That's I think the more worrying
thing. That's the main thing. I agree with you.
Like, there's a physical aspect there, definitely, but there also does seem to be a mental thing with him, where he wasn't coming back for the playoffs the year that KD was there and Kyrie, where they sort of like they teased it, didn't they? They were like, oh yeah, he's going to come back, and then last minute they changed. Like, what happened there? And we thought, oh, maybe, having Kyrie, KD, he's not the star, the pressure's off. That didn't seem to work. I guess there's a physical aspect throughout all of this that I'm going to try and respect, but yeah, he has a lot to prove, especially where he was a couple of years ago. I think there's not expectations on the Nets at the very least. I know Mikal Bridges has been sort of singing his praises through the off season, and I'm very wary of believing anything anyone says about Ben Simmons in the off season, because I've seen this man drain 40 pointers in videos and stuff like that. So that type of thing, I'm not bothered by. I just want to see. Yeah, I actually would like to see him on the court and performing again. I think I feel a bit sorry for him, if I'm honest, at this stage. Yeah,
it's an interesting one. I'd really, I mean, and like you said, I've seen stuff from Mikal Bridges. The more permanent ones I've seen has been from Cam Johnson. It's more of, I'd love to see what his teammates truly do think of him. Like, if he is a presence in that locker room, in that whenever they're in training camp or whatever. If he's there with good vibes, or if he's there just to sort of show up, doesn't really get involved, and then goes home early. Like, I want to know what he's like and how he's been, because it's easy. Like, again, it's hard to defend how he's been in the past few years, but it's so easy as well to just jump on it when you don't really know if he has been. Like, for all we know, truly, he could have been dying to get on the court for the last 2 years, but literally physically found it impossible. Like, there is, I don't believe that, but there is the aspect of which you can go to it. All of like Cam Johnson, I know it's because of obviously the same nationality and things like that, but if it's not this year, then it will be next year where he does come out and he'll play through pain. He'll play through pain is what it essentially is. If he is suffering as bad as it's made out to believe. So
I was going to say, what level would you want him to get to if we're sort of discussing this? Because, like I said, his stocks are so low at the moment. If he literally goes on the court and plays 40 games, that's passing my expectations.
If Ben Simmons played 40 games this year, it would go beyond my expectation.
So,
but
like,
that's because of what we've seen of him.
Are we ever expecting this guy to get back to an all-star level or like an all-defense level? He was in an all-NBA team actually as well. So that's the level he was at some stage. Is he ever going to get back to that?
If it's not this year, then my stocks will be next year. When the NBA summer videos come about, I'll be right there.
I think the main thing with this year, what I'm saying, the expectations on him is because I want him to prove that he can get back on that trajectory at least this year. Not immediately bump back at that level, but you can see maybe the defense is probably the easiest thing to do first when healthy, because he has that genetics where he's just massive for his position and can move like a guard, obviously, which he is, but just at that size and with that length, he can just be a menace on the court. That's probably what you'd want to see first. That'd give you more confidence about where he is physically, and then after that, I just want to see that he can show glimpses maybe this year, or do it in enough games where you'd say, okay, if he can play, then he can get back to getting his career back on track.
I mean, I don't want to bang on about Ben Simmons too much, and I think we've already spoken about him for too long. Yeah. The one thing I will just mention as well is I know he played a very small amount of games last season when he did come back in for that short period of time. Regardless of all of this, I don't think it fits with the Nets in general. When he came back in, he doesn't fit alongside Nick Claxton, and he ended up being a backup big. Yeah. Essentially, is what they did, because it doesn't really work with Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges with how he is, and he doesn't shoot. So there is that to factor in. But if he can just prove sort of health and play multiple games within a shortened window, that is the first stepping stone. But again, for someone that's on $39 million a year, it's impossible for it to be any lower right now for Ben Simmons. But we'll see. Louis, do you want to hit us with one of yours?
I guess. Should we just go for Zion at this stage?
We can pick Zion up. Yeah, we absolutely can.
Because it's a kind of similar scenario, really, as well with the questions over. There's definitely, there's physical aspects where, everyone will say about the weight and how big he is and the athleticism and how that affects it, the jumping and the running. But I think there's also, his teammates have maybe clouded the image of basically his willingness to play a little bit. I know CJ McCollum had some sort of like comments when the Pelicans got eliminated this year. Just sort of like, it made people question, I guess, whether this guy is doing his all to get back on the court, whether he's training fully, whether he's willing to play for a certain level of pain barrier. Obviously, we don't want players to play for a real pain barrier and get themselves more damaged, but if it's just sort of like everyone's, I guess every single athlete is playing through some form of pain at some stage or the other. Because the issue is with me, I don't think he has anything to prove from an on-court perspective. I actually don't. I think when he's playing and when he's healthy and on the court, I think he's genuinely one of the best 15 players in the NBA, or he'd be like one of those that I choose. It's just that he can't do it, and whether this is an environment thing in New Orleans, I'm not even trying to make a joke about the gumbo or whatever, or if he just got too comfortable there. Whether he needs pastures new to secure that, or he just needs different teammates, or a bit of a wake up call or a different environment. I'm not too sure. But I think he just needs to prove, just like Ben Simmons, I guess, really. He's got less to prove than Ben Simmons because we know he's just a genuinely really good NBA player at this stage. I want to see him. I want to see him play more than... What was the highest game total he's ever played? I don't even know. It can't be more. It can't be more than 50.
He's had a 60-game season.
Has he?
Fair enough. Yeah, his second year.
And that was a really good season, wasn't it? 27 points or something like that? Or did he get all the NBA?
Basically, whenever he's been on the court, he's been one of the most dominant scorers in the league. So it is a strange one, as you say, because when we say, players we want to prove, the proof with him is more, what you said earlier. Maybe it's hard to assess someone's hunger and drive, obviously, but and that's where all the memes about him getting in shape and taking it seriously come from. We just want to see him play as many games or enough games where you can start seriously putting him in those conversations, as you say, for top 20 players, which when fit he should be. So yeah, it's an interesting one because you don't know how much is just injuries that he's picking up and how much is attitude or a hunger thing. So it's tough to really analyze it, but obviously we want to see him out on the court playing.
I would say he's had a particularly eventful off season as well.
Yeah, that
shouldn't really play into it, but it kind of does. He's at the forefront of more discussions now that I think he has been previously.
So I think, yeah, again, I agree. I agree with you, Louis, in terms of that when he's on the court, it's no issues. It's getting on the court is his problem. Do you think there isn't any scenario of which it is a Pelicans issue that they don't know how to handle Zion? Do you think it's all? Do you think the Bucks stops completely and solely with Zion, or do you think there's potentially something in the franchise? I know he's been renewed and he's on a new 5-year contract and he got the extension, but like, do you think there is a scope in which if he gets a move and a trade there? Because I could see that happening, and that's not like a. I don't think that's a small chance. I think if it doesn't really work this year or next, I can definitely see the Pelicans look into. They'll definitely look to move him, and then that's where normally when these like unbelievable stars that come off their rookie contracts or on that sort of realm in terms of they're young in the league, if they get a move, sometimes it does really help them.
I can't really point that this is. I can't really point to anything specifically that they've done wrong. From like a building around him standpoint, they traded AD and they got some great players from that, and they flipped other players from that scenario as well. They've drafted well, I feel like. So from that perspective, like from things that I can measure, I don't think they've done a particularly bad job. I feel like maybe, and this is more speculation at this stage, maybe they are a bit soft with him, and maybe they do let him do what he wants a bit too much, and that might play into things. That again, I don't know that like for certain. It's just what I feel like a little bit. So it's hard for me to say. I do feel like if he was in an organization, which like this would never happen because they don't have the assets to get Dame Lillard. But if he was in the Heat, can you like imagine with their sort of regime and their conditioning type of like there's just that culture and that environment I think would help him a little bit more than the Pelicans, where I guess there is sort of like this history, this aura of like they're a new franchise, I guess, in general, and they're also a bit of a failing franchise. They're the smallest franchise really in the NBA, bar maybe OKC. So yeah, I do like that. That's just like, again, pure conjecture in my head. I feel like he may be better off elsewhere at this stage, but I can see why you'd want to keep him because what I said at the top. And I can see why they give him this leeway because that's kind of what everyone does with superstars really at this stage in the NBA. They give them whatever they want, bar James Harden. Yeah.
Right, I'll switch it over to one of my ones, and I only had realistically 2, potentially 3, but I'm gonna leave that third one because I think it was a little bit maybe too harsh, is what I'll say. But the one that I'm gonna bring up, and he's a popular man on the NBA Twitter timelines, especially for slander. It's RJ Barrett. It's who I'm going to say has got something to prove next year. Now, the reason I say this is the Knicks are, and it's again, when this goes out, you might be listening to this a week later and someone's got to trade and someone's got to move. There's still potential for players to be moved and traded, but it looks like the Knicks are going to go in again with Jalen Brunson as their sort of main guy. Julius Randle as the sort of second option is what I think is fair. And then RJ Barrett as the third guy. Now, if you ask any New York Knicks fan, I'm pretty confident RJ Barrett is the most decisive sort of split opinions. Majority of them will say that he's horrendous, or they'll say he's still got sort of a ceiling to get to, and he's shown signs and he's shown sort of moments and glimpses of that he can definitely be that guy for them. It's been 4 years now is the issue with that. And this is normally the sort of the stone of the pillar of where you go, okay, this is going to work, or absolutely not, this isn't going to go. He signed the extension. The bit I want to say, though, is that when you're seeing him play in some of these exhibitions for the FIBA, for Canada, you can see he's got it. And I know it's completely different to talk about sort of international basketball when it gets into the NBA and the whole rudder of it. The point I'm making in terms of why I think he's got something to prove is that Jalen Brunson's quality is now sort of, no one questions it. Everyone knows he's a top guy. Julius Randle, they know that when he gets to big moments, he seems to like back away from it. He doesn't seem to sort of live up to the moment. But in regular season, Julius Randle, you can't really question him over the past few years. RJ Barrett will put up a 25 to 30 point game and then go missing for 6 straight. I think up 4 years within this league now, and when you're looking at sort of being that second or third unit guy, you can't go one game and then miss 6 and shoot 0 and 9 at the start and things like that. That's where he needs to sort of prove himself to settle in and be that consistent guy to help the Knicks. It's hard to say this with a straight face, but to help the Knicks realistically push on further then this sort of glimpse of that, if they make the playoffs and if they get out the first round, it's a massive success for them. That's sort of where I think their mindset needs to change. Maybe I'm going a bit above and beyond, but I'd like to hear what you two think on that.
I think the main thing with RJ Barrett is consistency, as you say, because even though he's been in the league for 4 years, he is still 22. So he's got a long time to improve. But the Knicks are at a strange point where they're knocking on the door, but when you look at the team, you think it doesn't look like they can push through to really challenge the top teams in the East. So I think that's why you look at RJ Barrett and Julius. I'll throw Julius Randle in it as well, because it's got to be one of them two basically that takes that next step. And with Julius Randle, he has it in the regular season. You see him, and he's all-star caliber easily. But as you say, when it comes to the playoffs, he hasn't performed. And I feel like maybe we're looking at RJ Barrett now because of the fact that he is a bit younger. We look at him and say, all right, maybe RJ Barrett hasn't got it. We're now focusing our attention on you, and you're the one that's got to make the leap.
Well, they gave him the not massive mega money deal, but he's going to get paid 30 mil pretty much for the next 4 years. They're tying him in as that backcourt with Jalen Brunson. So you're saying these are our two guys now to run the backcourt for the next minimum 3 years.
Yeah, and that's why I think this is where the most proof comes into it. It's because I think everyone has decided they've looked at him now and say it has to be you that steps up to take the Knicks to the next level to maybe compete with those top teams. There's
going to be so many Knicks fans that listen to this and go, RJ Barrett is the guy to take us to the next level. No.
Yeah, I'm not saying obviously that he has to immediately be the best player on the team and they've got a challenge for the title next season, but people do want him to take that step up, because otherwise I don't think anyone can really see the Knicks getting any further than they have with this current roster construction.
The thing for me, I think, because I've always really liked him actually, I think he's got sort of like a good mindset as well. I don't think him and Julius Randle work very well together, and I think that might be the crux of a lot of his issues. I feel like RJ, he's an inconsistent jump shooter. I think we can all agree that. You can see that in the playoffs. You just have to watch a couple highlight clips, really. But I think he's best when he's sort of running downhill with the ball in his hands, distributing. He's actually quite a good playmaker, and he's really like physically quite imposing. He's got those long arms. He's quite tall, and he's got he's good at handling the ball. But I just feel like Julius Randle takes those opportunities from him a little bit in terms of spacing slightly. And also because Julius Randle is just the more ball-dominant player of the two. And naturally, a lot of those opportunities either go to Brunson, which they should do because he's the best player on the team, and then they go to Julius. And I feel like it's then left for RJ to work with scraps a little bit, or even then like a second unit, which might they're just not as good players, basically. So I feel a bit sorry for him in that sense, whereas I feel like Julius kind of has halted his development slightly, whereas if he was, like Jalen Green, who we talked about earlier on, if he was given the ball all the time, we would see him, I think, average like 25 points in his earlier years. I feel like that's probably the case. Whether that team is good or not, fair enough. Julius Randle obviously elevates his team to a certain standards in the regular season. So, yeah, I do think there is a certain level of expectation on him, but I think it's slightly unfair because I don't feel the environment is set for him to do what he can do best, I think, really. And I do think that Julius Randle thing it will come to a head at some stage. It feels like it's always coming to a head at every single season, but I do think as good as he has been for that franchise and as far as he's taken them in comparison to other people, I just think for the betterment of the franchise, they need to find a better number two, and move him on a little bit.
Yeah, completely. Right, let's do one more each from you two, and then we'll wrap it up here before we jump into the tier list that Lewis has provided. I haven't looked at it yet, but let's go through them. So, Lewis, hit us with your one now.
Right, this one's a one that's a bit of an odd one because I'll say it now. It's Kristaps Porzingis, and the reason why it's strange is because last year, obviously, he had his highest scoring season yet. And so you think, okay, he's might be playing some of his best basketball. Why has he got come into this season? Why has he got something to prove? And I think it's purely because, as you can see in the lovely photo on screen for people who are listening, it's just Porzingis holding up his new Celtics jersey. He is now on,
but yeah,
he is now on a team who should be competing to win the entire thing, and maybe even now in the East are the favourites with him on top. It's a toss up between. I think people would say them and the Bucks, and obviously the Heat got there last year, but I think people put the other two are just a tiny notch above them. And we've seen Porzingis in a team that should have, maybe not should have, but could have competed before in the West with the Mavs. And him and Luka, who you'd think would be a good fit for each other, just didn't work out. And I think that took his stock down a lot. And and then he obviously goes to the Wizards, has his best scoring season, and now he's moved on to another team that is in an even better position to contend. So less looking at his stats, you just want to see him be able to perform and propel a team to, hopefully get a championship. That's what their aspiration should be. Obviously, the caveat with him is always injuries, and he had the plantar fasciitis diagnosis a few weeks ago or a couple of weeks ago. So maybe that plays into it. But basically, my point for him this season, for him to prove, is that he can be one of the main options, because he's obviously not the main option with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but one of the main options in a team that can win a title, essentially.
I think for me, the only thing that I would struggle on would be, I don't know if he would be the option that I would say out of the Celtics has the most to prove. I'd probably say the buck would lie with Jaylen Brown next year, especially after the main money that he's going to have got paid. Obviously, Jason Tatum's going to get more when it comes to it. But I feel there was a lot of issues, obviously, with him forcing him onto his left and everything that comes from it. But I don't know if Porzingis coming into this side, after what he's done at the Wizards, I don't think I certainly won't expect to see a stat lines like he was getting in Washington. Because I feel if that's what they're trying to do, it's going to take away. You're taking the ball out of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's hands too much. I feel like he can be a complementary piece to those two in a way of which they had too many sort of guards last year, I feel, that would just work in different scenarios. Now they don't have that. Obviously, they've lost Marcus Smart, which was a big loss for them. But I feel he offers them a different dynamic. And going into the season right now, if you was going to ask me who would be my pick, it would be the Celtics to win everything, purely because of, I know Kristaps has had it in the past, and I know he's got the issue right now and whatever, but we've seen that in recent years he has gotten better in terms of reliability, and there's not really a question between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum's availability on the court. I think the three of those, coupled with the roster of how deep they are, even though Robert Williams again is someone that's had issues, and Malcolm Brogdon and whatnot, for me, the Celtics are just overall the strongest team that's there. And that's no disrespect to the Nuggets or the Bucks. I think they're right there with them. It's just the Celtics have that little edge for me.
Yeah. And this is what I was saying earlier when I said this isn't an individual performance.
No.
Prove it to me when it comes to just, because putting up stats is putting up stats, whatever. We know Porzingis can put up stats when healthy. For me, this is, I want to see him contribute to a team that, at the very least, competes for a title at the highest level. So, and that is, I think, a minimum for them finals. It has to be a minimum of finals, and they should be trying to win it.
I was going to say Jaylen Brown, but you kind of mentioned it, and I think you kind of gone through the points that I was just going to say, because I think he's a really good player, but that's a heck of a lot of money, and he hasn't really done it. He has done it in games in the playoffs, but he's not putting up stat lines like, he needs to be like averaging like 25 points for the money that he's on, I think personally. And I do think he's been a key reason that they haven't won against the Warriors a couple of years ago. And I do think he gets sussed out a little bit in the playoffs. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm going to go for my sort of out of left field one, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to say Luka. Luka Doncic, obviously. I do just feel like they had a really disappointing last season, obviously. And he's getting to the stage now, he's approaching prime, I guess you would say. And so this gets into the window of like they're gonna have to, they're gonna have to win with him, or at least prove to him that they can win with him. The team that they've constructed around it. Obviously, they re-signed Kyrie. That'll be a massive story, I guess, as the season develops. How those two work together, if there's any sort of hijinks that happen off the court, or if they just seem to work it out. But I do just feel like he needs to come into the season in good shape. The Dallas Mavericks need to compete to a decent standard. They need to make the playoffs at the very least this season. But if I'm with a player of his quality, I think that they should be at least going second round. So he's sort of my out of left field one, because we all know what Luka Doncic can do particularly. But I think he's in that rarefied air where, like the other players that we've talked about today, I don't think they're expected to lead their team to a championship. But he is, and he hasn't done it yet. So he's that next one. We had Giannis, he's done that now. Jokic has done it now. Is he the next guy up? Maybe. I know those guys have had teams built better around them, I think personally. So that's maybe a slightly unfair comparison, but I do feel like if he doesn't perform to a decent, if his team doesn't perform to a decent standard, I should say, this season, because he always does, there'll be some pretty big question marks, I think, over, or there'll be some hate thrown his way, definitely. Some sort of questions like, is this guy who we thought he was? Even though that's probably not very fair.
Yeah, I think the thing with Luka is, even though he is 23 now, everyone, well, not everyone, but the majority of people, I think, would say he's a top 5 player in the NBA. And with that statement comes expectation. And so even though, as you say, the roster isn't as well constructed for him as it has been for some of the other people you'd throw in and around that level, it's interesting because you'd actually, when you go back and look at the rosters, the Jalen Brunson Porzingis roster was probably the best constructed one for him. And obviously that kind of crashed and burned a little bit, so maybe that adds to it as well. But if you are someone that people think is a consensus top 5 player in the NBA, the expectations are going to be great on you. And if your team didn't make the playoffs last year, then immediately questions are going to get asked whether they're warranted or not, because we have seen in the small amount of playoff time he's been in, because he's so young, he has performed at an unbelievably high level. So it's just maintaining that consistency and getting his team, or helping his team get into those positions, just because of how great everyone thinks he is.
And I think people will start being like, can you win basketball games this way with him, the way that he plays, where he's so dominant?
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be less like that this year with Kyrie. I assume it will be, because he's a ball dominant player in himself. But people were starting to question that, last couple of years, really. So there'll be more questions this year if they don't succeed.
Yeah. Indeed. Right, is that us done? Is that us done for NBA?
There's so many more in my head, but I guess
we could have a volume. We could do a volume 2 to this one, but I think for now it's probably a good place to wrap that one up there in terms of that. We didn't even touch on the FIBA, the Basketball World Cup, because I think that starts this weekend. If there is stuff that you want us to talk about on the World Cup, we'll probably discuss it slightly in the next one. I can't say I know too much about sort of some of the lower ranking basketball teams that are in there. I know that the USA and the France are going to be at the top. But, it's something that's a nice little amuse-bouche before the NBA season starts. Not that the World Cup should really be described as that, probably, but it's just how I think most people will see the World Cup in terms of the NBA side of stuff for it. But that'll be the wrap on the NBA side, as we've been doing, though, throughout the off-season. And we might continue this in general, because I have quite liked doing these towards the end of these podcasts. It's we're going to do another tier list. Hopefully Lewis has picked this one out for us. I have just seen what it is. It isn't a big one. It won't take us long. I suspect 10 minutes at max. For the YouTube, if this is the clip that you're watching now, make sure you hit the subscribe button over on here. Like the video, please. And, check out the actual podcast. The link will be in and around here somewhere. But, Louis, I know you're now left out of the loop. So we're going to jump into this one. And this is the best pizza toppings. Now, from what I can see, there isn't loads down the bottom in terms of what you'd normally have on there. And some of them I can't even work out. I don't even know what that is. Is that crab?
I will have to get it up and look, because it's quite
I
hard
can't
to
even
see
see what
through,
that is.
actually. So I will
But
have
in
to look
gen-
myself, but yeah, I can't
but
tell at the moment.
In general, we've got the right stuff, the great stuff, the good stuff, the so-so stuff, and the low-tier stuff in terms of pizza toppings. Now, are we going to have this as a default sort of thin Italian with tomato sauce, or are we going to be
It's
going? Because
just-
I feel that they differ depending on the pizza.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Look at the options of the topping. This is like you're ordering
Alright.
a
Okay, yeah.
takeaway pizza.
Pizza.
where you
All right,
get
if
your
we're doing
like-
takeaway pizza, takeaway
Yeah.
pizza, bacon. I'm going to make the claim that it's there.
Yeah, I think everyone agrees with that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
No
can't
one's
really-
going to argue bacon.
No
Yeah.
one's going to argue bacon in S tier in the right stuff. for it.
Maybe if you're a Neapolitan, but that's
Yeah.
we said
Is
that's a
that
different
steak?
Yeah, but look. As I said, yeah, that is steak. As I said, no.
Oh.
If you go to Italy, you're not finding half these toppings anyway. So
No.
this is full American Italian pizza. Like, there's no need to.
I
try
don't
and
think I've
distinguish.
ever had steak on a pizza.
No, I haven't either.
I don't think I've had steak on a pizza either.
Like proper
No.
good steak is that's taking the mick, I feel.
I don't like that at all. I don't like the idea of that. I think
I
just have
don't-
one
I
or the
don't know if I
other.
don't like the idea. I just don't
I
think
mean,
I've ever
if
thought,
you
let me
wanna-
put steak on a pizza.
If you want to change it from steak and just say beef, because I've had beef
Like
on
ground
pizza
beef.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
If
yeah,
you wanna
yeah,
just call
that's
it beef,
classic.
that makes it easier. Yeah, so we'll just call it beef.
I think great stuff. I wouldn't go right stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It has a nice sort of like ground texture, I feel like. Oh, I do like. Okay, I'll let you go.
I am a big fan of a pepper on a pizza.
Yeah, bell pepper.
Yeah,
We're talking bell
brilliant.
pepper, yeah.
Yeah, bell pepper. I would almost go here if I'm being honest.
I think so, maybe.
I would personally put it in great stuff, but if someone wanted to put it in right, because if you are gonna put vegetables on top of a pizza, obviously not including tomatoes here, it's one of the first ones you go to.
Yeah, I think we put it there and then we'll assess. Just because you did say tomatoes also on top of a pizza, I think that's there. I don't
think that's
want.
stupid,
I don't
yeah,
want a double
understand
tomato.
that.
I don't want a double tomato.
Yeah.
I don't want it. I don't want the.
A lot
I
of
can
people
understand.
also don't like a raw tomato, like a slice of raw tomato. I don't mind
So
it.
it's
personally, but-
different. The little cherry ones I can get on board with. What I never understood with, like school cafeteria pizza, where they'd get like a big steak tomato,
A
and
beef
then they'd
tomato,
slice
yeah.
it. Yeah, nah, I'm not a fan of that. I'm not on board for that. Sort of thing.
As we say, you want to make a distinction. This is on top. This isn't part of the actual sauce itself. Because obviously,
Yeah, of course, yeah,
everyone's
of course. We're
putting
not
tomatoes
saying.
on top.
We're not
You know,
going to disrespect. We're going to
Tomato-less
humble.
pizza.
Yeah, we have to
Yeah.
humble the tomato, but the tomato is a key. So
Yeah,
everyone knows that it's there for it.
I also am not the biggest fan of extra tomatoes on pizza.
Broccoli on a pizza.
Never had it.
I've
Put it
never
in the
had that.
bottom. No way am I putting broccoli on pizza.
I just feel like
Yeah.
I've
It's too
seen.
much.
I feel that's a very American thing where they'd have like a white sauce and then broccoli as a topping,
Yeah.
and that's not something that we get here in the UK. I just don't. See
Yeah,
that.
usually that's
Not
like a
evolved.
spinach. Usually that's
Yeah.
a spinach type thing. They usually do like a
Yeah.
ricotta cheese sort of base on it.
This is looking to me
Cheese.
like a bit of parmesan. This is what it looked like to me here.
I mean,
Am I wrong?
parmesan, cheese, whatever, put it up top. Simple as that, really. for
Yeah.
me.
If it's parmesan, I put it just below. I feel like parmesan leaves a bit of a whiff that I'm not a fan of. Is the only issue with that
I do
one.
like.
But
I like
parmesan
parmesan,
stuff.
I like
Yeah,
parmesan.
I can't be.
I think this is divisive. What's the word? Chicken.
Chicken.
Mushroom.
You think chicken's
Oh, chicken.
divisive?
No,
Oh,
brother, a lot
okay.
of people do not like chicken on a pizza, is what I discovered. A lot
Yeah,
of
you're
people
not
don't like
wrong.
chicken on a
I
pizza.
quite like it though, personally.
I love
think it's
chicken.
great stuff.
I'd quite happily have it on great. I wouldn't put it up the top.
Okay.
I'd put
We're
it
putting
on
everything up top. We need something. We need some
yeah, don't worry.
disparity
Look,
here.
I had a quick look over. There are definitely stuff that will fill it out.
A chicken and pepper pizza for me is pretty top tier, but I like a barbecue sauce on that, and I know that's absolutely satanic to some people. So
Barbecue base is not the one, personally.
I understand
know
it's
this is
satanic
weird, but
to people, and I can accept it, but I
It's-
do like it.
it's not just that. I think a lot of the time when you get it, the barbecue sauce tends to dry out very quickly. And
Depends
so
on
you
the
get some
barbecue
really
sauce,
bad
though.
ones. It does. You're
Depends on
right.
the
It
barbecue
does. So
sauce.
if it's done really well, then I can accept it. But most of the time,
Corn or sweet corn on a pizza.
I quite like sweet corn. I quite like it.
it's all right. I wouldn't put it there. I'd put it in the middle. I put it on good stuff. I don't love sweet corn on pizza, but sweet corn is a very inoffensive vegetable, I think.
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that. Sweet corn on a pizza to me is very Pizza Hut. I don't know why. It's just very Pizza Hut.
No,
I feel like every Pizza Hut pizza has sweet corn on it.
Yeah.
I don't know what this is. And
It's
I can't
crab.
tell.
It's definitely crab.
It's crab.
Yeah,
crab
put it
is
at the
there.
bottom. Yeah.
Crab.
Any fish on a pizza. Any fish on a pizza is an instant bottom tier.
I will say this is divisive. Yeah, I was going to say anchovies is fine on a pizza.
I don't mind anchovies either, personally.
Yeah, I like anchovies, but
like,
it is just for the saltiness.
In general, I'm not a fan of fish and cheese as a combo, personally.
Unless, what about lobster mac and cheese? That could be a thing.
Never had it, but that seems a bit much.
Zucchini or the aubergine?
Yeah, that is
zucchini,
isn't it?
A zucchini.
Good stuff, isn't it? It's good stuff. It's not, you know.
I'd have it.
I would put it so. Yeah,
it's slimy. It can be slimy, which is the only thing I don't really like about it.
I think you have to have it in the right thing for it to really shine. I know a lot of the time in Italian cuisine, at least, obviously when they don't have a meat dish, it generally gets replaced by that. And those kind of things, I think, is where it serves its purpose. On a pizza, not so much.
Right, they look like padron. Are they jalapenos or are they padron peppers? If they're jalapenos for me, let's say jalapenos.
I think we'll just call them chili peppers. They're just chili.
Chili peppers for me. I would put chili peppers in so stuff.
I'd put them in the middle personally.
I'd put them in the middle as well.
A bit of spice.
I've been out.
Yeah, I'm not crazy over it.
No, right. Mushrooms, classic farmhouse pizza.
Great.
I'd throw mushrooms in good stuff.
I would put mushrooms in great personally.
Oh damn! Gee, I'm getting absolutely shot down.
It's just when I think about vegetables going on a pizza, mushrooms would be.
It just works.
Probably be above them, but yeah,
there's a good amount of variety to mushrooms. I can agree with that you can throw on them. There's different types. Now olives, I'm a big fan of. However,
I'm a big fan
will
of
say
olives
this:
as well.
If you get a pizza, and this is just to all the pizza makers that are watching this right now. If you put olives on a pizza and you leave the stones in the olives, I can't wish any more hatred upon you.
Who does that?
That's the thing in European countries. They do it. They do that.
Fair enough. I will say people that love olives, they really love olives, think it's sacrilegious to put them on a pizza and cook them a bit. So
yeah, but people that love olives so much that they go out of their way to make sure that they love olives, I'd expect that from them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. But as I said, I do love olives, and especially olives on a pizza. I'm a big fan, so you
just said great stuff for olives on a pizza.
Yeah, I really love olives in general, so I think that's why
I'd put them so as a topping on a pizza. I'd put them so. Individually, I can vary about that. Onions now.
Okay.
It's a tough one, this one.
It's not really.
I think onions can be quite overpowering.
They can be. And
not in this scenario, usually.
On a pizza, I usually don't mind them. So for me, I would put it in the middle, but I do agree you have to be careful.
Put it in so because I'm not like fussed about it.
Yeah, the thing I'd much rather have onions on a pizza than an aubergine.
Yeah, you're right. Do you know what? I'll swap them around. I know we don't normally do that, but I'll swap them around. Now, this looks like some cornichons, but it's going to be chorizo pepperoni. Yeah, it's going to be like one of those meats. And if it's pepperoni, we're easily. If it's chorizo, then no. But if we're casting that as pepperoni, it's top tier and it's not a debate.
Oh, no.
This is what everyone has clicked on.
We knew this was coming. Yeah, we knew this was coming.
This is going to be in the thumbnail on the clip. Somehow we're going to get Nathan to put a pineapple somewhere in this pizza thing. Where are your thoughts on pineapple on pizza?
All right. So the one thing I'll start off with, is I know people think it's egregious to put pineapple on pizza, but when you look at the toppings that go on American Italian style pizza, like there is worse. No thought is spared for whether you should be doing what you're doing. They just do it and see how it works. Personally, so having said that, even though I think people that say it's like blasphemous, I disagree with them because Americans put a lot of stuff on pizza. Like If it's food, they've probably tried it before. I am not a fan of it though. So
Where's it going? Where's it going?
I would put it in low tier personally, just because I would never order pineapple on pizza.
Low tier.
I would never order it, but if someone put it in front of me,
rush now.
Now, my argument for it is absolutely in terms of when you look at onions, courgette, aubergine. Sorry, when you look at onions, aubergine, and tomatoes, broccoli, and crab, the versatility, apart from crab, the versatility to go on multiple like pizzas and toppings and however styles is there. With the pineapple, it hasn't got that level of versatility. It's a one-trick pony. You kind of have to have it with like a ham or like a meat in that variety for it. You don't like. It's not even on veggie pizzas. They don't even really want the pineapple there, do they? It's normally just vegetable. They don't screw with it. With that said, I can't see it in low. If I see a slice of Hawaiian, I'd be like, yeah, I'd have a slice. I'd never order it in, but I'm not going to be like absolutely disgraceful.
Yeah,
but then it can't go low tier because I'd rather have. If you give me like,
I'd rather have it than crab. Yeah.
If you gave me an aubergine pizza or a Hawaiian pizza, I know what I'm eating.
I'd probably the aubergine pizza would usually be on just a vegetable one, and I would just pick the vegetable one. So, but I have a.
You'd pick a veggie pizza over Hawaiian.
Yeah, but I have a compromise if you want. If you move onions up to the middle, you can put pineapple in salsa.
Well, let's see what Louis says first, because you might be outvoted, mate.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with what he's saying. I think they're moving the onions
because
up a bit.
I feel like the so-so one is like if it's although actually this is an issue because if someone put tomatoes on a pizza, I'd eat it as well. But I feel like so-sos, if you put it in front of me, I'd eat it. I don't even think I'd eat a slice of crab pizza if someone gave me it.
That is disgusting. That is actually
and the broccoli one, I think I'd just take the broccoli off and eat it separately. So maybe if you want to put tomatoes up one, because I would just eat it with the tomatoes on.
Yeah, I can do that. I can live with that. Is that like potato?
That is potato. In which case, that is the exact argument I just made for the broccoli pizza. You can make for the potato. I'd just take them off. But I'd probably eat them separately, but I'd just take them.
Yeah, well, you could take crab.
What pizza is? What pizza has potato? But what pizza has potato on it?
I've never seen.
Yeah, I don't know. Also, yeah,
like you get a farmhouse, that'll be like mushroom and ham. Hawaiian is ham and pineapple. Like what is a potato pizza?
If it's food, someoone's put it on a pizza and tried it before.
Right, that's
just
like
regular
sausage. Yeah, I think sausage is great stuff. Yeah, it's great stuff. Like no one's gonna hate it. Like no one's gonna hate sausage on pizza. Is this spinach?
It is
kale. Okay,
it's spinach or kale. I think it's spinach.
That's low tier. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's low tier. It's too slimy to be on a pizza.
Eggs. Yeah, we can put it above potato. We can put it above potato.
Some poached eggs. I'm happy with that on it, but not
crab can go to the bottom, actually. I've had enough. Crab has actually thrown me.
No, do you know what? I would eat a crab pizza over a potato pizza.
Yeah, maybe.
I would.
Yeah. I also
a potato pizza is grim.
We've inadvertently made this tier list very even all the way through. We've done
nice,
the only thing I'll say is I feel the peppers is the ultimate sort of vegetable to go on a pizza. I'm fine with that. Which is why it goes up. Fine with that living there. Are we doing cheese as just like because in my head all of this is you get a margarita and then there's toppings. A cheese isn't a topping to me.
Yeah,
like
we're kind of cheese. I've seen that before. You know,
we're kind of throwing in general. Yeah, like because the difference is you only get pizzas where they slice the mozzarella. And kind of place it on as opposed to just having the whole thing covered. I feel like that's included as well. So for me, I think cheese just has to stay top.
Right, well, there it is. That is the Swingman Podcast's official pizza topping list, tier list. If you disagree with any of this, most in particular, Hawaii, like your pineapple on your pizza, let us know in the comments down below. That's going to wrap that podcast up there, though. Thank you very much for watching and listening. If you are listening to us across any of the audio stuff, please subscribe to us and leave us a review. It would help us out more than you can imagine. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll catch you in the next podcast. Peace.